Terraria has often been touted as a sort of 2D version of Minecraft, but there are many players out there that see the pixelated art style and side-scrolling aspect to do a straight 180. Is that a poor lack of judgment on their part? Yes it is. Left to our own devices, this side-scrolling adventure sandbox experience, to our surprise, is so much more than meets the eye. With really slow and steady progression and hundreds of hours of unique content, as well as plenty of fun repeated content too. The interesting part to Terraria for us is the truly balanced nature of the gameplay. It's a game for anyone due to the variety of ways you can go about it. Whether it's fighting enemies, mining ore or tunnels, building homes or crafting new items, you aren't funneled into doing any particular thing, and can even shy away from areas you don't like, especially if you have friends to play with to fill those roles, where you can have a maximum of 8 players. Although the progression is very intentional, by choosing to gather basic materials and craft tools to improve your capabilities, the game is littered with countless ways to offer up unique, non-craftable boosts to your arsenal. For example, here we were looking like a bunch of lemons in our wooden armour until Bias got his hands on this mace, and had maybe 3 times the range of anything we'd currently got our hands on.
Oh, that's got your name on it there.
Mate, that's sick.
That's
look at that.
Ah, wreck this thing.
Fuck you, jellyfish.
Oh my goodness.
It hits them on the way out and on the way back in. That's pretty nuts, actually.
Well, that's kind of changed everything up a bit.
It was these types of pick-me-ups that gave us a burst of motivation to take on the next challenge, even if it was an unfounded confidence, as taking on this boss with our new mace and a cheeky new helmet left us laughing somewhat awkwardly at how unprepared we still were.
I'm not doing it anywhere near enough. I was mashing his hands a little bit and it wasn't even going down.
Alright, we need a bit more for the first boss.
In Terraria, the world is made up of multiple different biomes, different vertical levels, and even regions where evil has started to corrupt the land. Depending on how much time you want to spend in exploration, you have the choice between small, medium, and large maps, all of which by default are randomly generated and packed with secrets, cave systems, enemies, and bosses. However, if you don't like randomization and you've seen a map that you really like in someone else's game, you have the ability to manually enter that seed and get the specific map you want. You also have decisions over the difficulty and the type of evil or corruption you want to go against. In addition to the map difficulty, you also have the option of choosing player difficulty. This means you can choose whether you keep all your stuff when you die, or you drop everything in the traditional Minecraft style, and if you want your stuff back, you're going to have to retrace your steps through the map and find it again. However, for those players that really want to test themselves and are a little bit masochistic, there is the permadeath option, where you only have 1 life, and after you're dead, that's it, you have to start again. Nex and I both jumped into this game as a co-op experience, and even before we'd started playing, Nex already had a bunch of hours in the game playing alongside friends and family. But if you're the kind of person that wants to relax by themselves, or you find yourself without any friends, the game can also be played solo, and there are a lot of players that will choose to jump in and go it alone. However, our experience was co-op, and all in all it was pretty excellent. The devs seem to have put a lot of effort in the game to make playing with other people seamless, convenient, and fun. Certain potions allow you to teleport from one person to the other, there's a cool colour system to create teams so that you can see people of the same team colour on the map, and to be honest, the nature of the game just lends itself to being fun when you play with other people. The exploration, boss fights, gathering, crafting and building are all amplified with that community feel and the shared experience when you all come together and do something. And I'm sure that for many people this game has created some really great gaming memories. It is also worth noting that there is no shared loot, so players will have to dance on that knife edge between finding cool stuff to equip and leaving cool stuff for your friends to find. Some people will take everything and some people will leave a lot for their friends. It really depends on where that line is and the relationship you have with the people you play with. Moving on to building, like in many survival games, the building and construction is the first thing that really shifts you from surviving to thriving. Without a place to call home, a warm bed, workbenches and a barrier between you and the dangers of the world outside, games like Terraria become much less comfortable. And in Terraria itself, the building is pretty good. It's intuitive, it's varied, and it's pretty enjoyable. You have a huge range of materials to build with, and the block-by-block placement combined with the materials at your disposal means that you can really be as creative as you like. While some players will be content with the practical and utilitarian approach to their structures, Other players will want Terraria to be the canvas on which they build their masterpieces. Ultimately, there is no right and wrong here. As long as the structure keeps you safe and you have places to put your stuff, it really doesn't matter how good you want to make it look. When you set up your home base, this is where you'll teleport when you have the items to do so. And it's where NPCs will live when it's time for them to join you. It's also worth noting that not all NPCs will live in the same place. So it might be a good idea to build some structures in various different biomes to give them all places to live. To help you survive on your way through the open world, you'll eventually need to start pooling your resources to craft weapons, armor, and gear to help you stay alive. And crafting certain things allows you to craft more complex things and get some additional quality of life. These things that you can craft to allow you to craft are things like workbenches, anvils, and forges, as confusing as that entire sentence was. But don't worry, because in Terraria the crafting is pretty straightforward. There are a limited number of items that you can craft without building any of the crafting stations, but in general, as long as you have the materials and you're stood next to one of these things like the workbench, forge, or anvil, you'll be able to scroll on the left hand side through everything you can make at that time. In the early game, you will start off small with wooden armor and weapons made from budget metals, but eventually as you build in strength, you'll get things that allow you to fly, turn invisible, gun down enemies, and do all kinds of crazy things that turn the game less into a survival game and more into a theme park or playground. Moving into the combat, in the early game you're basically going to do whatever you can to survive. The enemies you encounter will have a real chance of taking you out, so you do feel a little bit like prey in the first hour or so. However, after this you'll probably have made some rudimentary equipment and given yourself a fighting chance against some of the starting enemies that spawn around you. After some time you'll hit a point where you can choose a class, like summoning, magic, melee, or ranged, or even a hybrid between more than one of these. When this option begins to open up, you can find and craft class-specific items, giving you buffs for different abilities like melee speed, range damage, or the total amount of mana you have. This personalization adds some cool little RPG elements, and when you start to gain strength and take on some of the more challenging enemies and bosses, the game really does start to come alive and begins to feel like an adventure you seek out, rather than you just struggling to fight and stay alive. Finally, the overall purpose of the game is ultimately up to you. You can create a large sprawling world to relax in, build, craft, and expand like a sandbox builder. Or you can jump into a small map and aim to take down the world bosses as quickly as possible with a friend. The scope is pretty broad in what you decide to do, and this makes it a great game for a number of different people. The graphics and the art style keep things casual and old school, and the audio adds to this overall feel, meaning that older players may well get a pang of nostalgia, and younger gamers will find it fun and entertaining. Regardless of what kind of path you take in Terraria, whether it's solo or with friends, or to relax or have a deliberate goal, it's likely that you're going to have some fun here.
As it's a sandbox experience with next to no guidance on what to do next, Terraria is really just as good as you make it. I've played on a number of different worlds with different groups of people, and each playthrough is fundamentally different to the next. And maybe that's because most of the time, I don't necessarily do the majority of content on that world before starting a new one, but you might do if you're the completionist type. Due to this, the enjoyment for us were in peaks and troughs. When there is a clear boss or objective in mind, everyone can be working towards it, and it's where the levels of fun hits a peak. However, when you aren't so sure what to do, exploring is not yielding any results, and you aren't in the mood to be creative with the base building, you can find yourself in a bit of a lull at times. It's overwhelmingly positive on Steam, with seemingly no genuinely negative reviews in sight, so despite the constant comparisons with the likes of Minecraft, Terraria does more than enough to stand on its own 2 feet. The sheer number of items and variety of utility they offer means even hundreds of hours in, you're always finding something new. And with a development team that communicates with their community through monthly states of the game, it seems it's kept fresh to this very day. If you're on the fence, then I hope this has helped you decide whether or not to give it a shot. On paper, this absolutely didn't seem like my type of game, but a couple hundred hours in, and I think it's safe to say, I like it. Let us know what you think of the game in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next one.
Oh, here we go.
Hey, that's yours.
No, you have it.
No, you
Was it a trap?
it's crushed by explosives.